Welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Grizzly, and today we continue to look at the Delphi case and the recent arrest of Richard Matthew Allen, a 50-year-old man living in Delphi, Indiana, a stone's throw from Monon High Bridge, where he first had contact with the victims, a stone's throw from where they had all the press conferences. It's a small community, 3,000 people. So today we're going to look at how this man stayed under the radar for so long. Like, what did he do right? As much as we don't like to say he did that right, he did do some things right to stay undetected for 5 years and 8 months before he was finally arrested. Of course, he is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The trial is set to begin in March of 2023. Whether or not that will happen at that time, that's what the date is right now. It could be pushed forward. We just don't know. So we'll keep an eye on that. But this right here is one of the reasons that he stayed undetected for so long. I'm pretty sure he also helped out in the search for the girls, don't you think? There were so many people volunteering to search out there. Man, I would bet that he went out there and helped in the search as well. Because these types do it. We know it, right? Here they say, Angela Ganote, excellent reporter, says, sources with first-hand knowledge tell Fox 59 that Allen came forward as a witness in the earlier stages of the investigation. And I believe they mean within the first 2 years of the investigation, which is interesting. I wonder how much weight his testimony of who he saw out there on the trail that day had in the sketches. You know, I wonder if anything he said added to it, whether it would be the first sketch. One might speculate it would actually be his input on the second sketch, based on the second sketch not having a beard or anything like that and looking really young and nothing like him at all. Those are also the sketches that he was comfortable being photographed in front of. The sketches were on the windows at his workplace, in his workplace, and he even offered to print funeral photos for Libby German's family. Like, this guy is unbelievably calculated, calm under pressure, and really just kept his cool, which is how he may have never been caught unless it was for, I speculate now, DNA. Someone either gave him some DNA or someone tipped the police off and they were able to get a water bottle out of his trash or something, which we've heard happened before, and then link his DNA to the crime scene because he wasn't on the system. He has no other criminal records besides, of course, not wearing a seatbelt or speeding, but it's no major criminal records leading up to a double homicide in broad daylight. Even just to think of him being out there for a walk in broad daylight, apparently with his cell phone, because allegedly, he's one of the cell phones that actually pinged in the area that day, which is also why I'd come forward as a witness, like I was just out on a walk. Wow, but in broad daylight, to be lurking around there, hunting for victims. And we don't know if there's any connection to Kegan Kline, Tony Kline, to Ron Logan. We don't know yet. Maybe we will know one day. I really hope so that we can make sense of everything. Because Kegan Kline's Google searches, including searching the Marathon gas station and saying he was waiting in a red Jeep while someone else committed the murder, that's all very strange still. So we are yet to see, and as Doug Carter said, they haven't ruled anyone out. But to think that this man was so calculated that in broad daylight he could commit a double homicide, and to think that he may have staged or posed the bodies, I don't know for what reason, except Doug Carter saying, we know that this is about power for you. And I would still speculate it's about power for him in the network he may or may not be associated with, which has been described as a global network. Doug Carter thanked global partners twice in the press conference. So as we know, with those networks that we're talking about, with inappropriate material involving children, yes, that would usually be international networks. And he could have gained some notoriety in taking pictures of the crime he committed in broad daylight in a small community and sharing it with that network. Can you imagine how significant he would feel in that community? Those really dark web, those people probably gave him a big pat on the back if that's the case. Anyway, moving along, if we look here, they say according to his marriage license, Alan married his wife at the age of 19, which we've looked at in the previous episodes. I'm just going over it again now. And she was also 19. So his cover life already began with maybe his high school sweetheart. You know, I'm just saying that there's probably some serial offenses before he commits murder. There's always the first time that a killer commits murder, of course. We don't know if there's any more victims or not. But the offenses leading up to that, that could still come out. Those would be the skeletons in his closet. Now that the Delphi community and beyond has a name and a face of this man, I have no doubt that with the tip line staying open, more tips are going to roll in about people who have encountered him and maybe how dangerous he really was leading up to February 13th, 2017. They also say Alan moved to Delphi from Mexico, Indiana in December of 2006. That's when he bought the home he's lived in since. So that again, that's another point that he stayed put. He didn't leave Delphi, Indiana, the small community. This is how he stayed undetected. So calculated, he stayed in the house he bought in 2006. He stayed with the wife that he married when he was 19 years old. He had a regular job. According to the marriage license, and I haven't seen it for myself, so if you have it, please send it to me. But there are locals that have said, according to his marriage license, that's where it says he was actually a driver for a company at the time of the murders, which could make some sense to me because either, you know, you wouldn't want to take the day off of work to commit this crime. That would be a huge red flag. You also can't do it in your lunch hour because it would take a lot longer, and we know he wasn't there during lunch hour. You know, so between 2 and 5, I would say that is the horrendous time that this crime happened on February 13th, 2017, which I believe was a Monday. So it would have to be something that you can hide while doing something else. So dropping off a package and then on your way to something else, now you're doing this. So that would actually make sense to me. But if you know more about his work history, please send it to me. I'd be very interested to know. Apparently at the CVS he worked at, he was a manager, he had a pharmacy technician license, and he was a shift supervisor. So over the years, his role changed a little bit. The pharmacy technician license was apparently obtained in October of 2017. So again, I'm very interested in what he did before October 2017. Of course, what exactly was his work at the time that the murders took place, and even the decade before that. I'd love to know, like, did he study anything? What did he do? I know that he was the class of 1991. There's a yearbook photo of him on Facebook if you want to see that as well. And I think that was in Miami, Indiana. So I'll put a picture up here so that you can see it. But we don't know all that much more about him yet. I'm sure the trial is going to bring about a lot of information. So just to summarize what I just said, how did he stay undetected? He stayed in his house in Delphi, Indiana, really close to the bridge, to Abby's house, to all the places where they had the press conference, really close to everything. It's a small town. He stayed married, and he had a regular job, and at the regular job, he was the nice guy. He offered to print funeral photos for the families, apparently though, seeking them out, like actively seeking family members out when he saw them come to the CVS, and walking up to them to interact with them. That's very sickening to think about now in hindsight, and I'm sure right now they are also feeling like that. So you see, he was the nice guy. I'll print the funeral photos for you, no charge. He was friendly to everyone. People's jaws dropped when they saw this guy arrested. Like, this guy interacted with our families, with our children, with our babies. He's a family guy. He's got a daughter of his own. He apparently has a stepdaughter as well. I'm not sure how that's possible or how that fits in, but that's what was said in my live chat yesterday. And really, on the surface, he was just cool, calm, and collected. You know, shiny badge, nice guy, helpful guy, joking around, didn't lose his temper or cool too often. You know, so he really behaved himself for 5 years and 8 months, and he must be really, really pissed right now. Now, in this clip here, we're going to hear from his childhood best friend.
Neighbors told us Richard Allen grew up here in the small town of Mexico, just about 30 miles from Delphi. We spoke to several people who knew him, and all of them said they never would have suspected him.
People change over the years. And I haven't seen Ricky for a long time.
Richard Allen, a.k.a. Ricky, grew up in this home in Mexico, but neighbors say they haven't seen him much since he moved to Delphi in 2006.
He was all around good, normal, everyday family. There was nothing out of the ordinary about him.
Before moving to Delphi, he lived in this home with his wife and daughter, according to neighbors. David Yoder lived across the street, but has known Allen since he was born and grew up with his dad.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never thought living across the road from him, there's anything. That's where I would have sent my kids to, if there had been any trouble.
But after hearing Allen was arrested and charged with killing Abby Williams and Libby German, he's now questioning if he really knew him.
It's just hard to believe. He's a heck of a nice guy. Always has been.
Allen's parents still live in Mexico, but nobody answered the door today. Their neighbors describe them as nice people, but some still have a lot of questions.
I honestly just don't know how his parents could not, I don't know how they could not know.
Allen has no criminal history, but Carroll County dispatch records show he had one encounter with police in 2015. The sheriff said it was a domestic issue where Allen was supposedly drunk and his wife took him to a Lafayette hospital. No law.
You see, and that is listed from my research under his alias name. So if we look at the criminal records under that alias name, Craig Ross Renfro, you find some questionable things there. Unlawful possession of a syringe and all kinds of other substances and things. And then you find this domestic dispute and things like that. And apparently, as we heard here, he was at some point a struggling alcoholic. So I also wonder if that is why he checked himself into a facility. Apparently, that's just rumor. But apparently he checked himself into a facility within a month after the murders took place, and he checked himself in for 30 days, voluntarily.
Law enforcement action was taken, but deputies were sent to his Delphi home to, quote, keep the peace. If he's found guilty, his old neighbors say he deserves the maximum punishment.
And if he did do it, he deserves to fry.
Damn, credit to that guy who grew up with him, knew him, since a child, knew his dad, saw the family, lived across the road, and he's like, yep, if he did it, he deserves to fry. Because sometimes you see people stay very stubborn and like, oh no, it can't be him. We've actually seen that in this case. There's someone on Facebook that I showed a clip of earlier this week where they said, there's no way he did this. There's no way. You see, some people say that, but he's like, if he did it, he deserves to fry. Now, if we look at this Indy Star article, they say Delphi murder suspect Richard Allen, Indiana town wants answers about the man who blended in. Richard Allen, 50, was the guy who worked at CVS. He played pool at the now closed JC's Bar and Grill. He was nice enough, not overly outgoing. In the small community of Delphi, Indiana, that was about it until this weekend. See how they worded there? He was nice enough, but not overly outgoing. That's how neighbors also described him. Yeah, he was nice, but he wasn't very sociable. He wasn't loud. There were no parties at the house or anything like that. That is how he just kept his cool this whole time. It shocked the hell out of me, 74-year-old Tom Brower recalled, while having a beer in the Office Tavern off Delphi's main street. This face of the man who he described as helpful and courteous popping up as a mugshot on the news. No red flags, Brower said. I freaked out, agreed 68-year-old Mac McClelland, sitting next to Brower. Neither had known Allen's name, but CVS is the only pharmacy in the city of 3,000, so plenty recognized Allen's face when state police announced he's a suspect in the 2017 killings of teens Abby Williams and Libby German. The girls went for a hike on Delphi's historic trails on a warm February afternoon, and their bodies were found in the woods nearby the next day. 5.5 years later, Allen has been charged with 2 counts of murder in the case, but the court has sealed the charging documents and the investigation remains open. Former Delphi bar owner describes biggest shock. Bob Matlock, who owned JC's Bar and Grill until he closed it late last year, can't fathom how the regular patron he knew ended up in this position. Allen and his wife came in 3 to 4 times a week, laughed with the other regulars, partook in the occasional somber conversation about what happened to the teens. This is another reason he stayed undetected. He'd actually talk about it. Of course, he, if he committed the crime, would quite enjoy that. Hearing other people's thoughts about the crime, hearing the horror of the crime. Knowing it's still very significant, he must have enjoyed over all this time the notoriety of this case, right? Over 5 years, hearing about it, seeing it in the news, seeing it on YouTube and everywhere, and also probably laughing at everybody of like, damn, none of them suspect me at all, because they really didn't. He was completely undetected until the time that he was arrested. So again, going over that, Alan and his wife came in 3 to 4 times a week, laughed with other regulars, partook in the occasional somber conversation about what happened to the teens and how awful it must be for their families. Their families, too, were patrons of the bar, which is something that was rumored earlier on in some of the coverage I did, where they said that Abby's mom frequented the same bar and apparently spoke to Richard Allen a few times. The 2 suspect drawings released over the years hung on the bulletin board in the bar. I mean, the picture was really everywhere. So him sitting there with that picture behind him, it's not that strange because the picture's everywhere. The picture's literally at his workplace, on the windows, on every building. It was everywhere. There's a picture floating around Facebook of Alan standing near the drawings. Matlock said no one ever thought there was a connection. Matlock is still skeptical. I really don't think the sketches served any purpose in this case, right? And they don't in many cases, unfortunately. Maybe sketches, do you think they should go or no? Do you think sketches are useful or not? Let me know in the comments below. They were a good family couple, Matlock said of Alan and his wife. That's what I guess was the biggest shock. CVS customers, police say Richard Allen blended right in. At the time of the slayings, 67-year-old Betty Cummings would occasionally have a lunch with friends at the McDonald's next to the CVS, which we drove past in map time yesterday. If you buckled up with us, thank you for being there. If you didn't, go check it out. The timestamp's there where it says map time on the stream before this video has been released. So they say friends at the McDonald's, right, was right across. We've been saying maybe he went there for lunch. Often, we don't know, to discuss theories about the case. She remembers seeing Alan come there to pick up lunch every once in a while, calm and mild-mannered. Doesn't that just sound like Jeffrey Dahmer? I'm not comparing the 2 criminals. I'm just like, Jeffrey Dahmer is also described as calm and mild-mannered. Gentle soul, but like, look what he did. So anyway, this criminal, this killer, alleged killer, suspected killer, was calm and mild-mannered, not really interacting with anyone there. But he was never part of their discussions. He was the CVS employee working the floor, helping her find an item. That is what he also did, helping people, families of the victims, find items, printing photos for them, and all that. Alan is a licensed pharmacy technician according to public records. Here we have a picture of Betty Cummings, Delphi. So thank you, Betty, for sharing with us what you know about Richard Allen. He's just blended right in, she said. You wouldn't even suspect the guy. Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, told reporters Monday that Allen had processed photos of the girl at a local drugstore and did not charge the family for the cost. Allen's apparent undistinguished life. Well said. An undistinguished life in the community stunned local law enforcement. I've been in our business for a while, and I thought, boy, how I'd even missed that one. Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lesenby, who's been in law enforcement for 36 years and whose department assisted in the multi-agency investigation, told IndyStar. Lesenby suddenly found himself trying to recall any bit of conversation that he had with Allen, the kind of pleasantries one has every day with someone ringing up a customer. Now think about that. It's the only pharmacy in Delphi. So Doug Carter would have been there at some point, Tobe Lesenby, the FBI dudes that are in the area. All these people working the investigation probably interact with him over time. That's another whole scary thought, right? I mean, they must be like, what? Like, I went there so much. I mean, he really was hiding in plain sight. Here you can see a picture of Tobe Lesenby's office, and there is a picture of Bridge Guy as well as the sketch. And you can see he's just pinned the younger picture there. And I do wonder if Richard Allen coming forward as a witness to who was out there that day, did that add to this sketch being created? You know, that's going to be very interesting. In a prepared statement from a spokesperson, CVS officials said they are shocked and saddened about Allen's arrest in the investigation. As members of the Carroll County community, we remain devastated by these murders, and our hearts go out to the German and Williams families, the statement said. We stand ready to cooperate with the police investigation in any way we can. Lesenby said an arrest in Abby and Libby's case felt almost like a goal for him before his term as sheriff concludes at the end of the year. On a file cabinet in his office, Lesenby only has a few items pinned up, two schedules for the Pittsburgh Steelers and a side-by-side photo of the Delphi suspect drawing and a grainy photo taken from Libby's cell phone. He's kept the photos up since the first days of the investigation as a reminder of his goal. He always believed the day would come, citing his faith in the steadfast work of investigators from multiple law enforcement agencies as the sources of his hope. Yet the news still feels surreal, he said. I mean, to us too, right? Even me, here in the Netherlands, I'm like, whoa, before I was even on YouTube and I was a true crime podcaster. My podcast is now exclusively on Patreon, in case you wondered where it is. But I just saw every true crime podcaster talking about Delphi. I'm like, what is up with this Delphi case? Let me look into this. And since I looked into it, I'm like, oh my word, what a case. So it is still surreal to all of us in the true crime community and beyond that they've actually arrested someone and charged him with 2 counts of murder. You're not just going to charge someone with 2 counts of murder unless you have some solid evidence. So again, let's see what the trial brings. They say about 5.5 years. You wonder whether or not you're dreaming and whether or not this is actually real, Lesenby said. It doesn't seem real to 48-year-old A.J. Robinson either, whose early impressions of Alan were benign. Robinson met Alan briefly for the first time at JC's, the pool bar. They had a short conversation where Robinson told Alan about how he's legally blind. Anytime Robinson went to CVS thereafter, he said Alan would come over to him and ask if he needed help. He was always nice. Anybody would tell you that, Robinson said. You'd never think in a million years. Residents around town marvel at what a national and international story has become of their community, with mixed feelings. Some feel protective of the victims' families, like a local business who posted a sign barring media from entering. The CVS where Alan worked booked a private security guard to monitor the entrance Monday, something residents never see. Above all, they've just wanted answers. It hits home. Here in this town, it really hits home, Brower said. People in this town want answers. Of course, Indiana State Police's tip line remains open, and those with pertinent information can email Abby and Libby Tip at cacoshrf.com, or you can call 765-822-3535. If you know anything about this man, if you're in the area or you were just traveling there and you encountered this man and there's anything valuable to add to the case, please do contact the tip line. I also wanted to share this where they say experts weigh in on why the Delphi arrest court documents are still sealed. Indianapolis, 2 charges of murder have been filed against Richard Allen, but the details behind those charges are still under wraps. The probable cause affidavit is sealed, despite an arrest made and charges filed. Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClellan said the investigation is ongoing. For that reason, and for the nature of this case, the probable cause and the charging information has been sealed by the court, McClellan said during the Monday press conference. Indianapolis attorney and former deputy prosecutor Ralph Staples said, "This is very rare. Honestly, I've never seen this before where you've got somebody in custody and the documents still remain sealed," Staples said. He said the decision to keep these documents sealed comes down to the judge. The public's right to know is sometimes trumped by law enforcement's need to maintain some secrecy, Staples said. In this case, the man who made the decision is Carroll County Circuit Court Judge Benjamin Diener, according to the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. He ordered the probable cause affidavit sealed. Staples said a decision like this points to erring on the side of caution. You've got 2 dead kids in a very tragic situation. Nobody wants to screw this up, Staples said. Not the police, not the prosecutors, not a judge. As for what reason could have been given to the judge to keep the doc sealed, both Staples and former FBI special agent in charge, Paul Keenan, said investigators could still be trying to make more arrests. If there are other suspects in there, you want to have a chance to go after them as well, Keenan said. Keenan now works at a security consulting firm called, don't know how to say that. He said letting too much out to the public could damage the investigation. I mean, there's already so much out, right? That of course, this guy's going to have defense attorneys. There's already a lot of stuff out there. If you put that out into the public domain and there are still other suspects out there and they have a piece of that evidence, they may try to destroy that evidence, or they may even try to flee the jurisdiction. Good point. The charging information for Allen is also still sealed. We know Allen faces 2 counts of murder in the deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German, but Staples said there are more specifics to find out. He said Allen could be charged with intentional killing or felony murder. If I am charged with intentional killing, that means I did it, Staples said. I fired the shot, I strangled, stabbed, I did whatever. If I'm charged with felony murder, that means someone died while someone may have been committing a felony. As for if those documents become unsealed before the trial, Keenan said that is ultimately up to the judge. Staples said it's unclear if that would happen. You just don't know. This is truly uncharted waters, Staples said. This is not something I've dealt with as a prosecutor or a defense attorney. But the public might not be the only ones in the dark. Staples said it's possible Richard Allen has not seen the probable cause documents either. Unless he's seen it, unless his counsel has seen it, they have no idea, Staples said. Fox 59 is working to get access to the documents filed in this case. We're filing a public records request with Judge Diener, who sealed the affidavit. Yesterday in a live stream, one of the Grizzlies, actually Tom, sent me another background check. I have the one from being verified, but he sent me another background check that had a VIN number of a vehicle. That VIN number comes up with a 2013 Ram Pickup 1500 black clear coat. That is a vehicle registered to Richard Allen. Of course, we saw 2 Ford Escapes from the search that I've done registered to him. But very interesting that he also has this pickup. So whether that has anything to do with anything, I don't know. I just wanted to tell you about this vehicle as well. I also want to make sure that on this channel we know exactly when Ron Logan passed away. At the time when I was talking about the search warrant, not yesterday, I mean originally when it came out, I remember this whole debate of he died in 2020, no, 2021, but he died on January 24th, 2022. And I'm not just basing this on this article. I have the actual court documents for Ron Logan's son being an heir to his estate and taking over that estate. And it says that the decedent died on January 24th, 2022 of Rona complications. So now we know for sure again, write that down, January 24th, 2022. Why do we even talk about Ron Logan? Because the victims' bodies were found on Ron Logan's property. Now there's some interesting stuff on Reddit always, right? You got to take it with a grain of salt, but this person, Bitterbeat Poet, posted lots of interesting things years ago already. It says edited 3 years ago. It's a person who lives there. And man, if you just scroll through this entire thread, it is so interesting. I'm going to make sure that I pin it in the comments below as well so that you can go and see it for yourself. But here they say he was parked at the Mears lot. Derek, which would be Libby's dad, said he saw him get in his car and leave an older 4-door blue sedan. It did look like there was an older 4-door blue sedan being towed away when they searched Richard Allen's property. So I don't know if he would still have the same car now, but it's interesting nonetheless. There is so much here that you can read. They say, a sketch is a sketch, nothing more, nothing less. I can only tell you what witnesses saw and what their answers were to questions they were asked. The hat was a short-billed hat, shorter than a baseball cap bill, and nothing about flaps whatsoever. Considering he was wearing the hat and the scarf, I think it would be very difficult for either witness to make a positive ID, and I'm sure that is why he did that. Duh. Also, there is in no way in a court of law you could make a positive ID from Libby's video. Although we have a general idea of his appearance, there's nothing definitive. The 2 important things I've taken from witnesses other than time and location, he is likely not over 5'7". And now, the accurate height is around 5'7", based on that mugshot, and you could just literally see the increments right next to him, and he's no younger than mid-40s. Literally 44 at the time of the murders, and this was posted 3 years ago, so then he would have been 47. So between 44 and 47 at the time of this post, yep, this person was onto something. The male witness said 50s or 60s based on what they saw. I think these are accurate. Beyond that, it's hopeless. Create the best profile you can, see if anyone fits. They say also Derek called at 3:11 when he was down by Wilson's Bridge, and he called at 3:14 again when he pulled into the Mears parking. Exactly how long he sat in the car before getting out and walking. When I asked, he wasn't sure, but not too much after. Like, this person literally spoken to the witnesses who provided statements to help out with the sketches and all that. This person literally said, this guy is 5'7", no taller than that, mid-40s. no younger than that. Like, oh, damn. And if you just read through all of this, I mean, I could honestly spend all day just going through this with you, but I won't, because I don't know how many of you are going to be watching that. But still, it's amazing to read this and say, sketch is irrelevant. Sorry, it also proves that law enforcement has clues, but they are basically clueless. They talk about April Tinsley's case, which took over 30 years to solve as well. And here they say, the single thing that gives me pause is just the timing. According to my witness, she saw him at the Freedom Bridge around 1:30 or so, and the girls arrived within 10 minutes or so after that. Coincidental? We'll likely never know. Damn. Like, I'm telling you, it says, due to his record and his resemblance to the sketch, which is all obvious, he did not take the day off that shift he's on. He works Tuesday through Saturday. I can tell you this, he must have a decent alibi. Like, again, just go over this. The link is going to be in the pinned comments for you with the timestamp of right here where we're talking. And it's like, wow. Just read it. It's so interesting in hindsight. 3 years ago, whoever this Bitterbeat poet is, they knew. They were onto something. Like, oh, these sketches look nothing like the guy. He's mid-40s, 5'7". Like, yep. And then there's that 4chan forum as well, where people were saying, just because you have a video of Richard on the bridge doesn't mean that Richard did it. Oh, damn. Okay, so if you combine all those things, wow, it's very, very interesting. So let me just read one more. They say, what anyone saw is just what they saw. You can't say what they should have seen. It doesn't work that way. No one knew what this guy was about to do or what he had just done. Indeed, the couple were arguing. The female of the couple did not pay one bit of attention to him. The young man simply said something to the effect of, he had on a hat like a professional house painter would wear and a scarf over the low part of his face. As soon as I saw the picture, I knew I'd seen him. I went straight to the cops. That was all he noticed, other than to say he was short and his girlfriend had nothing to add. She paid no attention to him. Why didn't she? I think the question is, why would she? And as far as random or planned, I don't know. And there was one more witness that I also know of, but when I reached out to him through a friend, the friend said his buddy didn't want to talk about it. And random or planned, how he came and left, none of this solves the crime anyway. If it was planned, I think it's reasonable to assume law enforcement finds evidence of that, but who knows? If he lives fairly close, which he now does, but based on what we know, they say it doesn't need to be planned. School was out and the weather was sunny and reasonably warm. He just drives over there on a flyer, which may be exactly what happened. I believe this. Whoever did this was experienced in this sort of thing, not murder, but SA, which is also something that I'm speculating serial offenders, doing other things and then eventually leading to this fantasy that he likely had, which would be the motive of doing it, and then also staging the bodies and all that. And I would have no doubt there would be digital trophies of that. They say, and was pretty intelligent. I don't believe anyone stupid pulls this off, given all the firepower law enforcement threw at it. I agree. This guy is pretty intelligent. Very calculated, very organized. What a case, right? So, again, go click on this, read through it yourself, and let me know what you think in the comments below, because it's all very interesting. Also, talking about that Marathon gas station that I mentioned earlier, they say Kegan Kline searched for the location of Marathon gas station in Delphi on the day of the murders. So this is according to the Murder Sheet podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, go check that out. There's an episode that they've actually linked here. I'll put this Reddit link there as well for you. But that's interesting that out of Kegan's own mouth, according to this podcast, he said that he was waiting in a red Jeep while someone else was committing the murders, and on the same day he had Googled the Marathon gas station, which is very close to everything. I'll show you on the map in a moment, but they say the gas station gave their hard drive to the FBI, but the FBI messed up and there were technical issues and they were never able to check the footage and see if Kegan Kline or Tony Kline were in the video. Oh, that would have been so helpful. Everything is so close on the map that I could literally just keep it this size right here. So if you look at the Marathon gas station, it's literally right there. You can see the old CPS building, the Monon High Bridge. There's the CVS where Richard Allen worked. So if there is any involvement with Kegan Kline, who knows what Kegan Kline was really doing on that day. He does lie a lot too, but it's all very interesting. But it's not far from the CVS or from Richard Allen's home or the Monon High Bridge, all literally in a very tiny radius over there, right by the Delphi Community High School and all of that as well. And yesterday when I was watching Neverless True Crimes video, he was also saying if this could be connected to someone like Kegan Kline and a network of people who communicate with teenagers on the internet. If this was a catfish type situation, maybe Richard Allen, if he was part of this network, would have gone out to the bridge that day knowing it's a pretty warm day, school's out, people are going to go out there, and maybe he was hunting out there for a while, trying to find the perfect moment to murder a teenager. He ended up murdering 2 teenagers, but one could assume, based on everything that's rumored out there, this is what is out there, right, on the threads from leaked sources and things like that, that Libby was the main target, which is very eerie to think about because she more closely resembles his own daughter. So that already is sickening. Build, hair, everything. It's like, oh dear. His psychology is going to be very interesting to analyze as well at some point. Hopefully, he's going to be evaluated, and at the trial they will speak to more on that. But yeah, maybe he was literally looking for a victim that suits his type of taste. And when he saw Libby, he thought, that's it. And maybe Abby ended up as collateral damage. We just don't know. So yeah, it could have been him, and we don't know who else. Imagine if there were other predators prowling around the area on the day as well. That is a scary thought. And the last thing I'm going to say for today, so it's not too long of an episode, is that you guys have all sent me this, so I will cover it as well. I have seen this, but for anyone who hasn't, they say, Sheriff's Deputy claims demotion over the Delphi murders investigation. This was October 26th, 2022, and that was the same day that they detained Richard Allen, which is interesting that he filed a lawsuit on the same day, claiming he'd been demoted on that day. And then on the 28th, of course, Richard Allen was officially charged with 2 counts of murder. So let's look at this. They say a Carroll County Sheriff's Deputy has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Sheriff Tobias Lesenby and the Sheriff's Office, claiming that he was the victim of political retaliation for his unsuccessful attempt to campaign in next month's general election. In the lawsuit, Deputy Michael Thomas cites his involvement in the early days of the Delphi murders investigation as the beginning of the end of his relationship with his boss. Upon Thomas's information and belief, Lesenby and others in the CCSO did not approve of Thomas running for office, in part because Thomas had made suggestions and offered assistance in the investigation of a high-profile child homicide investigation, which was overruled and which Lesenby and others in the CSCO feared would become publicized as a result of the campaign and/or Thomas's potential election. Sheriff Lesenby did not respond to a request for comment. When the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German were discovered below the Monon High Bridge in February 2017, Thomas was the Chief Deputy of Carroll County, the second highest ranking of 12 deputies in the Sheriff's Office. As Delphi was immediately flooded with Indiana State Troopers, FBI agents, and detectives from other agencies, Thomas took a lead role in assisting in the investigation. The bigger agencies were involved from day one, so I was deeply involved in the beginning. That involvement included conversations with then Carroll County Prosecutor Robert Ives. This crime is unique to this area, as well as pretty much a lot of different areas, and there are experts out there that have dealt with this sort of thing before, and I believe that it could have been very beneficial, said Thomas. In the very first few weeks of the double homicide, I wanted to bring experts in, and I was given that task by Carroll County Prosecutor, and basically they didn't like what I had to say, and it kind of went downhill from there. Ives confirmed those conversations to Fox 59 News. I do recall discussing with Chief Deputy Mike Thomas the possibility of seeking additional experts in the Delphi case, Ives wrote. I thought there were aspects of the investigation that needed experts that the team had not sought. If you look at my Delphi case file, which is ad-free and you can watch the whole thing through without interruptions, and there's timestamps below for you as well. If you go to the Robert Ives interview section on that video, you can see his interview where he actually said that he thought this case would be solved in like 2 days. That all the evidence was like right before him there, that he thought, damn, this is a terrible double homicide with so much there that they would catch the guy really quickly. So here he said, I thought there were aspects of the investigation that needed experts that the team had not sought. Thomas said his assignment by the prosecutor to seek outside experts was not well received by the leadership of the investigation. I feel that since that moment that I had a disagreement with the sheriff about this investigation, that it went downhill ever since, he said. I just felt like there were certain individuals within the command structure that didn't want to go in that direction. Why not? I asked. That's a good question, said Thomas. During his abbreviated campaign for sheriff, Thomas said that in open forums and conversations with county residents, he heard undertones of community dissatisfaction with the meager results of not only the Delphi investigation, but also into the probe of 4 young girls who died in an unsolved home arson in Flora in 2016, and the lack of information that was forthcoming in either case. If you haven't heard anything of the Flora fire case, the Flora 4, I have some videos on it as well in my Delphi playlist, and there's a Flora fire playlist as well, so go and check that out. A lot of them just wanted to know more about what's going on in the county with the sheriff's department involvement and so forth, and sometimes they felt like they weren't seeing the whole picture. Thomas's run for office ended with a loss in the May primary to a candidate who he said was chosen by Lesenby to succeed him, and who promised the outgoing sheriff he could have the chief deputy's post in a new administration. 3 days after the election, I was demoted back down to the road, said Thomas. I was pulled into the sheriff's office, and he spoke to me about it and handed me a letter about it and basically said, due to recent events, I'm taking you back down to patrol level. Thomas said Lesenby replaced him as chief deputy with Detective Tony Liggett, his choice to become the next sheriff, who was the CCSO lead investigator on the Delphi case. I feel like it was due to my debates that we've had and being outspoken about transparency in the department and so forth, said Thomas, analyzing why he thinks he ended up on the sheriff's wrong side. In those actions, I believe he didn't like what I had to say. Our county was hurt, and they're looking for someone to fill the position to make the county better and make it well again and a good, thriving place to live. Thomas's lawsuit was filed 2 weeks before the upcoming November election, which his attorney insisted is a coincidence of timing and was not intended to affect the outcome of the sheriff's race results. I think when you go into a case like this, you have questions about what someone's motivations were, and you have indications that based on the circumstances and timing and things like that being what they are, said Nicholas Snow, I believe my client ran for office and suggested improvements that could be made to the office in the course of his campaign, which is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Snow admits that under state law, a sheriff has the right to assign employees at his or her discretion. We have a constitutional right to our political opinions and the ability to run for office for a person that meets the qualifications and meets the prerequisites that there are for holding that office. We have a constitutionally protected right to do that. That is the way our system is supposed to work, the attorney continued. An employee does have the constitutional right to have a political opinion and should not face retaliation on that basis. Thomas claims his demotion has cost him an increase in salary, reduced authority, reassignment to a disadvantageous 12-hour road shift, demeaning comments, concerns about his personal safety while on patrol, and the overruling of his decisions. Nevertheless, Thomas said he would recommend the next sheriff take a stronger hand in updating the community on its unsolved criminal investigations and take the lead in correcting rumors and conspiracy theories that swirl around the Delphi case on social media. I would say take a look at everything. Speak to people that have been in similar situations and what they've learned from these types of investigations, and go from there, and be transparent with the public as much as you possibly can without losing the integrity of the case, he said. With all of these conspiracies and theories and stuff like that, it's law enforcement's job to try to put a stop to some of this stuff because it's not doing the case any good. Thomas has not been directly involved in the Delphi investigation for several years. I asked him if he thought the case would ever be solved. I don't know, he said. They say here, read the lawsuit below. And damn, 2 days later, Richard M. Allen was arrested. Some of you who are locals as well find this all very interesting. You know, the timing of the elections in the county, the new deputy sheriff being chosen, Tony Liggett being the one who went out there to give papers to Richard Allen as they towed away his car, and all sorts of things like that. So let me know what you think about this. I'm not too sure what to think about this, but I do think it's very interesting that he's like, I don't know if this will ever be solved, and he's filing a lawsuit against the county, and then 2 days later they're like, ta-da, we have our guy. I really hope that that is just coincidence. They really have the right guy. I really hope so. It does seem extremely promising that they have the right guy. He kind of fits the profile, right? The height, everything about him, physiology, the voice. I mean, just everything they said about him hiding in plain sight and all that. And they have charged him with 2 counts of murder. You're not just going to do that necessarily, right? You're not going to do that to a scapegoat or something like that. I don't think it would be a situation like that. But let me know what you think. I'm not here to cast any doubt on the case. I'm just reading you some of this. And I did find the timing interesting as well. I wonder now what Deputy Michael Thomas thinks of this arrest and what has happened in the 2 days after this was published and after the news had spoken to him. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it. If you are brand new here, thank you so much for being here. I hope you will subscribe, hit the bell so that you know when I'm next going live or uploading or premiering or whatever I'm doing. Check out my shorts section as well. I also have a second channel called G&T. You may be interested in that if you like some like snarky, humorous, lighter content. So that is also on my website, grizzlytruecrime.com. And thank you so much to all my members, patrons, and supporters. I really, really appreciate it. Remember, please, to like the video and share it. Hashtag Delphi, hashtag Justice for Abby and Libby. That would be so helpful. And if you are following me on Twitter at Grizzly Gizela or on TikTok at Grizzly True Crime, then I will see you over there. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and I'll keep you posted on this case and many more as always.